My husband is in Dubai with his girlfriend while I'm at our anniversary dinner. He texted, away for a family emergency. What he doesn't know is, I'm the one who funded his trip, and the private investigator sending me proof of his emergency. Tomorrow his lies unravel as I serve him divorce papers. My fingers trembled as I opened the text message that would shatter our anniversary dinner plans. The Olive Garden booth felt suddenly too large, the empty seat across from me screaming Spencer's absence louder than any words could. Away for a family emergency. So sorry, honey. We'll make it up to you. I set my phone face down on the table, the screen's glow fading to black like the last embers of what I'd once believed was a solid marriage. The bread basket remained untouched between us, between me and the ghost of my husband who was supposedly rushing to his brother's side in Chicago. Except I knew better. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for joining me for this story of betrayal and resilience. If you're drawn to tales of women finding their strength in life's most devastating moments, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us share more stories of transformation like Sophia's. Now let's join her at that fateful anniversary dinner where everything changed. The waitress approached with a practiced smile that faltered when she noticed I was alone. Would you like to wait a bit longer for the other member of your party? No, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. He won't be joining me tonight. I gestured to the menu. I'll have the tour of Italy and a glass of the house red, please. She nodded with the knowing sympathy of someone who'd seen this scene play out before. Coming right up, ma'am. As she walked away, my phone vibrated with an incoming email. The subject line made my heart leap into my throat. Dubai confirmation. Urgent. My hands were rock steady now as I opened the attachment from Mike Jackson Investigations. The first photo showed Spencer, my husband of 12 years, the man whose dental school I'd helped finance with countless overtime shifts, stepping out of an airport taxi. His arm was wrapped possessively around a woman's waist, his head bent close to hers as they checked into the Burj Al Arab. The woman wasn't a stranger. Jessica Miller, the dental supply representative who brought lunch to his office staff every month. The same Jessica who'd sent me a Christmas card last year, thanking the Reynolds family for Spencer's continued business. I took a long sip of water, ice clinking against my teeth. The decision to hire Mike Jackson hadn't come easily. For 2 months I'd lain awake beside Spencer, listening to his breathing while cataloging the changes. Password-protected phone, new cologne, unexplained withdrawals from our joint account, the growing distance between us that no amount of home-cooked dinners or new nightgowns could bridge. The classic signs, Mike had said during our first meeting in his modest office above the hardware store. Doesn't mean he's having an affair, Mrs. Reynolds. But something's going on. I remember how I'd flinched at his directness, this former county sheriff with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach. I just need to know, I told him. One way or another. Writing that $2,500 check had felt like betrayal. Money pulled from my emergency fund, overtime hours at the hospital where I supervised the billing department, extra shifts I'd picked up believing we were saving for a bathroom renovation. The irony wasn't lost on me, using my hard-earned money to discover how my husband was spending his. The waitress returned with my wine, a generous pour in a stemmed glass. Happy anniversary, she said gently, having noticed my reservation details. 13 years, I replied, raising my glass in a silent toast to the empty chair. The same restaurant where Spencer had proposed, down on one knee between the salad and entree, presenting a modest diamond that had seemed enormous to us back then. I scrolled through Mike's email, each photo more damning than the last. Spencer and Jessica entering the hotel. Spencer's hand on the small of her back. A gesture so intimate it made my stomach clench. And then the confirmation of charges. $7,500 for airline tickets to Dubai, charged to our joint Visa card. The same card I'd been making extra payments on, believing we were saving for a family trip to Disney World with my sister's kids next summer. I logged into our online banking app, the password as familiar as my own birthday. There it was, the transaction from 3 weeks ago hidden among grocery purchases and utility bills. How had I missed it? Between covering for a coworker's maternity leave and keeping our home running, I'd gotten sloppy with our financial oversight. Another text from Spencer lit up my phone. At Dan's apartment now. His girlfriend left him. Total mess. Talk tomorrow? I almost laughed. Dan, Spencer's brother, had called me yesterday about borrowing our lawn mower this weekend. He'd mentioned plans to attend a Cubs game downtown with friends from work. No girlfriend troubles. No emergency. Just lies piling upon lies. The pasta arrived steaming hot, a sampling of Italian favorites I'd typically share with Spencer. The waitress hesitated, then asked, "Would you like me to bring a to-go container for the extra?" "No," I said. "I think I've been taking home leftovers for too long." She didn't understand my meaning, but nodded politely before leaving me alone with my thoughts and Mike Jackson's evidence. I remembered his warning during our last meeting. "Mrs. Reynolds, prepare yourself. Whatever we find or don't find, things won't go back to how they were before." He'd handed me a folder with instructions. Secure important documents. Open a separate bank account. Change passwords on personal email accounts. Small acts of self-protection that had felt premature then but now seemed woefully inadequate. I twirled fettuccine around my fork, not tasting it as I calculated the years I'd sacrificed for Spencer's dreams. My associate's degree abandoned when his dental school demanded more financial support. The small house we'd purchased together in this quiet Midwestern town, chosen for its proximity to where he wanted to establish his practice. The nights I'd spent alone while he networked at dental conferences. Conferences that, according to Mike's investigation, Jessica Miller had also attended. My phone pinged with a final update from Mike. Footage of Spencer and Jessica entering their hotel room, time-stamped just 3 hours ago. Spencer carried their luggage, looking relaxed and happy in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Would you care for dessert?" The waitress reappeared, her notepad ready. A small, bitter smile crossed my lips. "Yes," I decided. "The tiramisu, please. It's my husband's favorite." I would eat it alone, this small act of defiance paid for on the credit card Spencer didn't know I'd started monitoring daily. Tomorrow he would return home to emptiness. Not just an empty dinner chair, but the empty shell of a marriage he'd hollowed out with his choices. Tomorrow the man who believed he was so clever, so entitled to his family emergency, while lounging in Dubai with his girlfriend, would learn just how resourceful his overlooked wife could be. Because while Spencer had been building his affair, I had been building my evidence. And as I sipped my wine in the same booth where he'd once promised to love me forever, I made a new promise to myself. This anniversary might be our last, but it wouldn't be the one either of us would forget. The tiramisu arrived with an extra chocolate drizzle and 2 small candles. "On the house," the waitress said with a gentle smile. "No one should be alone on their anniversary." I thanked her, waiting until she walked away before removing the candles. The tiny flames seemed to mock what remained of my marriage, small, flickering, and easily extinguished. As I set them aside, my phone buzzed with another notification from Mike Jackson. Additional documents attached. My finger hovered over the link. Did I really want to see more while sitting here surrounded by couples celebrating actual milestones? The elderly pair holding hands across their table, the young couple in the corner booth sharing a single slice of cheesecake. People whose anniversaries weren't facades covering betrayal. I tapped the attachment anyway. Hotel receipts from the Burj Al Arab filled my screen. $1,200 per night for their 5-night stay in a deluxe suite with ocean views. The reservation had been made 3 months ago, long before Spencer's emergency materialized. The confirmation email had been sent to Spencer's personal Gmail account. Not the one we shared for family matters, but one I discovered in his browsing history while using his laptop to print tax forms. My stomach tightened. The pasta I'd barely touched now seemed impossible to finish. Another document appeared. A dinner reservation for tonight at Al Muntaha, the luxury restaurant hovering 200 meters above the Arabian Gulf. A special note in the reservation read, "Anniversary celebration. Please arrange champagne upon arrival." Their anniversary? My fork clattered against the plate. I scrolled further to find a receipt for a diamond pendant from Tiffany & Company, $4,850 charged to our joint American Express card last month when Spencer told me he needed to replace expensive equipment at his practice. The delivery address wasn't our home or his office, but an apartment complex across town I didn't recognize. I switched to our banking app again, methodically checking every account. The pattern was clear now that I knew what to look for. Small withdrawals of $500 or $600. Just under the amount I might question, accumulating over months. Money I'd thought was going toward our future, funding his affair instead. How's everything tasting? My waitress appeared again, her gaze falling on my barely touched food. It's perfect, I lied. I'm just savoring it. Take your time. She hesitated. Your husband's missing a wonderful evening. Yes, I agreed, forcing a smile. He certainly is. When she left, I returned to Mike's email. His message was simple. Mrs. Reynolds, there's more. Call when you're ready to discuss next steps. My phone chimed with another text from Spencer. Dan's really struggling. Might need to stay overnight. Don't wait up. The audacity stole my breath. While he dined overlooking the Dubai skyline with Jessica, he expected me to believe he was consoling his brother in Chicago. The brother who, according to social media notifications I could now see on my phone, was currently posting photos from Wrigley Field with his friends. Everything all right with your meal? A manager approached, concern evident as he gestured toward my cooling food. Everything's fine, I assured him. Just received some unexpected news. Nothing too serious, I hope? His genuine concern nearly broke through my carefully maintained composure. Actually, I heard myself say, I just discovered my husband isn't having a family emergency in Chicago. He's in Dubai with another woman. The words hung between us, raw and unfiltered. The manager's professional smile faltered. I'm so sorry, he said finally. Would you like something stronger than house wine? On us, of course. I almost declined, then reconsidered. Scotch neat. Something expensive. While waiting for the drink, I scrolled through the rest of Mike's findings. Airline confirmation emails showing adjoining seats. A car service reservation from the Dubai airport. Jessica's Instagram account, set to private, but Mike had gained access, showing filtered photos of exotic meals but carefully avoiding any images of Spencer. The scotch arrived, amber liquid catching the light like liquid gold. Macallan 18, the manager said. One of our finest. I raised it slightly. To truth, I murmured, taking a sip that burned all the way down. As the alcohol warmed my veins, a strange calm settled over me. The initial shock was fading, replaced by something colder and more focused. I pulled out a small notebook from my purse and began making calculations. The Disney World trip we'd never take. $4,000. My overtime shifts since January. 212 hours. The money Spencer had diverted this year alone. Approximately $32,000. The value of the 12 years I'd invested in our marriage. Incalculable. I opened my email and composed a message to Mike Jackson. I've seen enough. Let's discuss next steps tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you for your thoroughness. The manager returned with a small box. Your tiramisu to go. And we've added a few extra breadsticks. He lowered his voice. My sister went through something similar last year. It gets better. I nodded, unsure if I believed him but appreciating the gesture. Outside, the parking lot was dark except for security lights illuminating patches of asphalt. I sat in my Honda Civic. Practical, reliable, purchased when Spencer had insisted we couldn't afford anything nicer despite his BMW sitting in our garage at home. I checked our credit card accounts one more time, downloading statements to my phone. Evidence. Ammunition. Each receipt a bullet in the chamber of what would soon become my Declaration of Independence. Spencer's final text of the night arrived as I started the car. Love you. Promise to make this up to you soon. I didn't respond. Instead, I placed my phone on the passenger seat, the seat where Spencer should have been, and drove toward our empty house, the dashboard clock reading 9:17 p.m. In Dubai, Spencer and Jessica would be finishing their anniversary champagne, unaware that every charge, every reservation, every moment of their celebration was being catalogued by the woman who had made it all possible. By tomorrow, I would be ready to turn evidence into action. I pulled into our driveway at 10:03 p.m., the modest three-bedroom ranch house dark except for the porch light I'd left on that morning. Our neighbor's dog barked a greeting as I gathered my purse in the takeout container, the smell of garlic bread lingering in my car. Inside, the silence felt different tonight. Not the comfortable quiet of a shared life, but the hollow emptiness of betrayal. I kicked off my heels and made a pot of coffee instead of pouring the glass of wine I desperately wanted. I needed clarity, not comfort. The kitchen table had always been command central for our household finances. I spread out my laptop, the folder of printed bank statements I'd been collecting, and a legal pad for notes. The coffee maker gurgled in the background as I logged into our online banking accounts. What I'd glimpsed at the restaurant was just the surface. With our entire financial history laid out chronologically, the pattern was unmistakable. For the past 8 months, Spencer had been making regular transfers from our joint savings account to somewhere else. $1, $500 here, $2,000 there. Careful to keep each transaction small enough that I might overlook it amid our regular expenses. I traced the outgoing transfers to an account number I didn't recognize. Nearly $42,000 had disappeared from the money we'd been saving for a kitchen renovation and eventually, the family we'd planned to start once his practice was firmly established. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for my coffee mug. Memories surfaced of all the sacrifices that had funded that account. Working double shifts on Thanksgiving and Christmas last year when the hospital was short-staffed. Declining my parents' invitation to their anniversary celebration in Ohio because we couldn't afford the trip right now. The overtime hours that left me exhausted but proud we were building something together. I opened another folder. This one containing Mike Jackson's detailed investigation report. The Dubai trip wasn't an isolated incident. Spencer had taken Jessica to San Diego in January, a dental implant seminar, Nashville in March, a practice management conference, and Miami in June, a continuing education requirement. Each trip charged to the practice credit card I'd co-signed for when we were first starting out. When Spencer's student loans had tanked his credit score and the bank required my signature as guarantee. The credit card that was supposed to be strictly for business expenses. I remembered how excited he'd been before each trip, how he'd kissed me goodbye with promises to learn everything he could, to make our future more secure. How I'd packed his suitcase for the Miami trip while he was at the office, carefully ironing his dress shirts and tucking in his favorite toiletries. Had Jessica laughed when he unpacked them? My coffee grew cold as I dug deeper. Dinner reservations at restaurants I'd mentioned wanting to try someday. Hotel upgrades to Ocean View Suites. A chartered sunset cruise in Miami that cost more than my monthly student loan payment. When the practice is more established, he told me whenever I suggested a weekend getaway. We need to be smart with money right now. I pulled out our tax documents from the filing cabinet, searching for anything else I might have missed. Behind our 2023 returns, I found something unexpected. A loan application from Lakeside Credit Union dated just 3 weeks ago. It detailed a request for $95,000 using our house as collateral. My signature appeared on the bottom line. Except I'd never seen this document before, let alone signed it. I held it under the light, studying the signature. Close enough to fool a loan officer who didn't know better, but this in Sophia was formed differently than how I wrote it. The loop was too tight, the angle too sharp. Spencer had forged my signature. The purpose of the loan was listed as investment property. I searched through Spencer's emails on our shared computer and found correspondence with a realtor in Scottsdale about a perfect vacation condo with excellent rental potential. A vacation property. Without a single conversation with me. I returned to Mike's report, flipping to the photos section. There, in a shot of Spencer and Jessica poolside in Miami, I noticed something glinting on her wrist. I enlarged the image, focusing on the distinctive silver and blue design of the bracelet adorning her tanned arm. My stomach lurched with recognition. I pulled up our credit card statement from April. There it was, a $750 charge at the David Yurman store in the upscale mall 2 towns over. Spencer had claimed it was a birthday gift for his mother. I'd even helped him pick out gift wrap when he brought home a small blue bag. A gift I'd indirectly helped select, for the woman he was seeing behind my back. I walked to our bedroom and opened my jewelry box. The Mother's Day gift from Spencer this year had been noticeably modest. Costume jewelry from the department store that had already tarnished. Business has been a little tight, he'd explained with an apologetic smile. Meanwhile, he'd spent nearly $1,000 on Jessica. Back at the kitchen table, I created a new spreadsheet. Column A. Every extra shift I'd worked in the past year. Column B. The amount earned. Column C. The corresponding expenses Spencer had made for his affair within days of my deposits. December 26th overtime shift, $450. December 28th dinner with Jessica, $380. Weekend call in February, $1,200. Upgraded hotel suite in Nashville, $950. Easter weekend double shift, $850. David Yurman bracelet, $750. The correlation was almost perfect. Each sacrifice I'd made had directly funded his betrayal. Dawn was breaking by the time I finished my analysis. My coffee had been refilled multiple times, the mug leaving rings on old bank statements I no longer needed to preserve. The evidence was overwhelming and meticulously documented in my new spreadsheet. I closed my laptop and rubbed my eyes. Outside, the newspaper delivery person tossed our morning paper onto the driveway. Normal life continuing as though mine hadn't just imploded. My phone buzzed with a text from Spencer. Heading to airport now. See you tonight. Love you. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my sister Maria, who answered despite the early hour. Soph? Everything okay? No, I said, my voice calm despite the storm inside me. But it will be. Can I stay with you for a few days? I have some things to figure out. Of course, she said without hesitation. What's going on? I'll explain when I see you. Maria? Remember that trip to Disney World we talked about taking with the kids? Yeah. We'll still go. Just not with Spencer. I hung up and looked around the kitchen. The space where I'd prepared countless meals, balanced our budget, and built a life I thought was shared. The house suddenly felt like a monument to my gullibility. But not anymore. Knowledge was replacing shock and determination was crowding out heartbreak. Spencer's lies had been meticulous. My response would be equally thorough. I packed an overnight bag and left our house before the morning rush hour began. Spencer wouldn't be back until evening, giving me plenty of time to set my plan in motion. My first stop wasn't my sister's place, but a small brick building on Main Street that housed Gunderson's Hardware on the ground floor and 3 professional offices above it. The door at the top of the narrow staircase had a frosted glass panel with simple lettering, Alan Parker, attorney at law. No flashy advertisements, no promises of aggressive representation or huge settlements. Just a name and a profession, exactly what I needed. Ellen had handled my parents well when they downsized 5 years ago. She wasn't a high-powered divorce attorney from the city, but she knew our town, our people, and most importantly, she knew the local judges. Her secretary, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and efficient movements, looked up from her computer. Sophia, do you have an appointment? No, but I was hoping Ellen might have some time this morning. I hesitated. It's important. Something in my expression must have conveyed the urgency. She picked up her phone, murmured a few words, and nodded. She can see you now. Go right in. Ellen's office was modest but tidy, with law books lining one wall and her diplomas from the state university hanging above her desk. She stood when I entered, her handshake firm, her expression shifting from professional welcome to concern as she took in my appearance. Sophia? What's wrong? I set my accordion folder on her desk, carefully labeled sections visible through the plastic tabs. My husband is having an affair, Ellen. And that's actually the least of what I've discovered. For the next hour, I methodically worked through the evidence. The bank statements showing Spencer's systematic draining of our accounts. The forged loan application. The credit card statements documenting his lavish spending on Jessica while I worked extra shifts to make ends meet. Ellen took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions but mostly letting me talk. When I finally paused for breath, she leaned back in her chair. This is meticulously documented, Sophia. But before we discuss divorce proceedings, may I ask why you brought these? She pointed to a section labeled, Dental Practice Finances. Because I think Spencer's fraud goes beyond our marriage. I opened the folder to reveal printouts from the practice management software. Reports I'd accessed using the administrator password I'd set up when we first purchased the system years ago. I think he's committing insurance fraud. Ellen's eyebrows rose as I walked her through what I'd found. Basic cleanings coded as deep periodontal treatments. Simple fillings billed as complex restorations. Routine X-rays classified as comprehensive imaging studies. I noticed the discrepancies last night while looking through our finances. The practice income has been steadily increasing, but our personal accounts don't reflect it. That's when I realized. He's getting higher insurance reimbursements and pocketing the difference, Ellen finished, her expression grim. This is serious, Sophia. Beyond divorce territory. I know. My voice was steady despite the churning in my stomach. That's why I'm here. I need to protect myself before all of this comes crashing down. Ellen nodded. We need to file emergency motions immediately. Separate your assets, secure your home, and document everything before he returns. She reached for her phone. I'm calling Judge Matthews. We can have temporary orders by this afternoon. While Ellen made arrangements with the court, I made another call to Denise Williams, who had been the receptionist at Spencer's practice since it opened. Denise, whose Christmas bonus I'd personally wrapped each year, whose daughter's Girl Scout cookies I always bought, whose mother's funeral we'd attended 3 years ago. Sophia? Is everything okay? Denise's concern was evident even through the phone. Actually, no. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. It's important. The pause on the line lasted several seconds. This is about Spencer and Jessica, isn't it? My breath caught. You knew. Another pause. Not at first. But then he started asking me to keep 2 scheduling books. One for the actual appointments and another, official, one for insurance and... She hesitated. For you when you stopped by. The confirmation stung despite everything I already knew. Denise, I need your help. Spencer's been manipulating the billing codes and I know, she interrupted, her voice dropping to a whisper. He said it was standard practice, but it didn't feel right. That's why I've been keeping copies of the original treatment notes. You have evidence? Yes. I was afraid someday someone would come asking questions and I didn't want to be the one blamed. I can bring everything to you. Today if you want. Ellen had finished her call and was watching me with interest. I put the phone on speaker and set it on her desk. Denise, I'm with a lawyer right now. Would you be willing to make a statement? By noon, Ellen had filed emergency motions to freeze our joint assets and secure the house. By 2 o'clock, Judge Matthews had signed temporary orders preventing Spencer from accessing our accounts while the case was investigated. By 4, Denise had delivered a thumb drive containing 2 years of discrepancies between actual treatments and insurance billing, evidence that would eventually reach the state dental board and insurance commissioners. What about your job? I asked Denise as she prepared to leave Ellen's office. Spencer will know you helped me. Denise straightened her shoulders. I've been looking for a way out for months. Dr. Wilson's office across town has been trying to hire me away for a year. She managed a small smile. Besides, my mother always said staying silent when you know something's wrong makes you part of the wrong. After Denise left, Ellen reviewed our progress. The house is secured. Your 401k provided the down payment and we've documented that. Your personal accounts are now separated, and Spencer can't touch the joint accounts without court approval. She tapped her pen against her legal pad. What about the practice? Your name is on several of the founding documents. I want distance from it, I said firmly. Whatever legal entanglements need to be undone, let's do it. I don't want any connection to what's been happening there. Ellen nodded. Smart. We'll work on severing those ties cleanly. He checked her watch. What time does Spencer return? His flight lands at 7. And where will you be? I thought of our house, the one I'd painted and furnished, where I'd planted perennials along the walkway and hung curtains in every room. The home I'd made while Spencer was building a life with someone else. With my sister for now. I gathered my folders and stood. But don't worry. Spencer will know exactly where to find me when he needs to. As I walked to my car, my phone chimed with a text from Spencer. Boarding soon. Can't wait to see you tonight. Love you. I didn't respond. Instead, I texted Mike Jackson. Everything in place. Proceed with final delivery as discussed. The pieces were set. By tomorrow morning, Spencer would discover just how thoroughly his careful deceptions had unraveled, and who had orchestrated their exposure. Maria's guest room became my sanctuary for 3 days. Her kids, 10-year-old Emma and 8-year-old Jack, accepted my presence with the resilience of children, asking only if Uncle Spencer would be joining us for pizza night. When I said no, they nodded and moved on to debating toppings, while Maria squeezed my hand under the table. Spencer's texts escalated from confused to concerned to angry as the hours passed with no response from me. The final message, sent at 11:43 p.m. on the night of his return, read, "Where are you? Called the hospital. They said you took personal leave. What's going on? Are you sure you don't want to answer him?" Maria asked as we sat on her back porch, watching fireflies rise from the lawn. "Just to let him know you're safe?" I sipped my tea, considering. He's not worried about my safety. He's worried about what I know. I pulled out my phone and composed a brief message. I'm safe. We'll talk tomorrow. The response came immediately. Asterisk, what's going on? Where are you? Asterisk. I turned off my phone. Morning brought a crisp September day, perfect for new beginnings. I dressed carefully in a navy pantsuit I'd worn to professional conferences, applied minimal makeup, and drove to Ellen's office to collect the final documents. Mike Jackson met us there, his expression solemn as he reviewed the plan. The process server will deliver the divorce papers to Dr. Reynolds' office at exactly 12:15, he confirmed. That's during the staff lunch meeting you mentioned. All the hygienists and assistants will be in the conference room, I nodded. Spencer always reviews the week schedule with them on Thursdays. A meeting I'd suggested years ago to improve office efficiency. Ellen handed me a thick manila envelope. The dental board has already acknowledged receipt of our complaint. And here's confirmation that the insurance carriers have opened investigations. He studied my face. Are you absolutely certain about this timing? We could wait. No, I said firmly. Every day he continues practicing is another day patients are being deceived. What had begun as evidence gathering for my divorce had evolved into something more significant. A matter of professional ethics that transcended my personal grievances. I returned to Maria's to wait. At 12:22 p.m., my phone rang with Spencer's number. I didn't answer. It rang again immediately. And again. Text messages flooded in. What the hell is this? Divorce papers? Seriously? You're reporting me to the dental board? Answer your phone. At 12:45, a different number appeared on my screen. Denise from the office. He's going ballistic, she said without preamble. Threw the papers across the room, canceled all afternoon appointments and locked himself in his office. Her voice lowered. Thank you for not mentioning me in the documents. That was Ellen's idea. Your statement is confidential until the formal proceedings. The hygienists are talking about quitting. Nobody wants to be associated with this when it breaks. Pause. Dr. Wilson asked if I could start Monday. You should take it. I already did. Relief colored her voice. Sophia? Good luck today. I met Spencer at our house at 3 o'clock with Ellen waiting in her car outside, close enough for support but giving us privacy for what needed to be said. He arrived with thunderous expression, slamming his car door hard enough to make the neighbor's dog start barking. What the hell are you doing? He demanded as soon as I opened the door. Some process server walks into my office, hands me divorce papers in front of my entire staff, and you're filing complaints with the dental board? Have you lost your mind? I stood in the doorway, not inviting him in. Dubai was lovely this time of year? His face drained of color. What? Jessica enjoyed the ocean view suite at the Burj Al Arab? The anniversary dinner at Al Muntaha. Sophia, I can explain. Your brother's emergency in Chicago was particularly interesting, considering he was at a Cubs game that night. He posted pictures. Spencer ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting as he recalibrated. Yes, I lied about where I was. I've been seeing Jessica. It was wrong and I'm sorry, but destroying my practice over it? That's insane. This isn't about Jessica, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. This is about the systematic fraud you've been committing. The falsified billing codes. The misappropriated practice funds. The forged loan application with my signature. His expression shifted from defensive to calculating. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. Denise kept records. For the first time, fear flashed across his face. You'll ruin everything. Our future, the practice, everything we've built. Everything I funded, I corrected. With overtime shifts and sacrificed dreams and the down payment from my 401k. The future you were building with Jessica while I worked 60-hour weeks. The fight seemed to drain from him. What do you want? The divorce terms are in the papers. I get the house, my money paid for it anyway. You keep the practice and its liabilities. We divide the remaining assets equally minus what you've already diverted. Ellen has the numbers. And the dental board? That's between you and them now. He stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. I never thought you'd do something like this. That was your mistake, I said simply. You never really thought about me at all. 6 months later, I sat in a classroom at the community college, listening to a lecture on healthcare management systems. My laptop displayed a carefully organized spreadsheet, so different from the chaotic ones that had documented Spencer's betrayal. This one tracked my degree progress. 15 credits completed, 25 to go. The divorce had finalized with surprising speed. Spencer, facing investigations from the dental board and 3 insurance carriers, had been eager to settle. I kept the house and received a fair division of our assets. More importantly, I kept my dignity. Ellen helped me file the paperwork to legally restore my maiden name, Sophia Carter. It felt strange on official documents at first, like trying on clothes I'd outgrown. But with each form I signed, each piece of mail addressed to Ms. Carter, I reclaimed another piece of myself. The hospital had been surprisingly supportive. When the story broke in our small community, as such stories inevitably do, my supervisor had called me into his office. I'd braced for embarrassment or pity, but instead received an unexpected opportunity. "We're creating a new compliance position in billing," he'd explained. "Someone with both administrative experience and understanding of medical coding ethics. Given recent events, I thought you might be uniquely qualified." The promotion came with a modest salary increase and a flexible schedule that accommodated my night classes. 1 year to the day after that fateful anniversary dinner, I hosted a small gathering at my house. No longer our house, but truly mine. The kitchen had been painted a soft sage green, replacing the sterile white Spencer had preferred. The backyard featured a fire pit where Maria's kids toasted marshmallows while adults circled with glasses of wine. Denise arrived with Dr. Wilson, their professional relationship having evolved into something more personal. My parents drove in from Ohio, Mom bringing her famous apple pie. Neighbors I'd reconnected with after years of Spencer's subtle social isolation brought side dishes and warm hugs. Ellen arrived last, carrying an envelope along with her potluck contribution. "This came to my office today," she said, handing it to me. "Thought you'd want to see it right away." Inside was official notification that Spencer had been suspended from all major insurance networks following the investigation's findings. Not a victory I'd sought for vengeance, but justice for the patients who had trusted him with their care. As twilight settled over the gathering, Maria clinked her glass for attention. "A toast," she announced. "To my sister who reminded us all that 42 isn't too late for a fresh start." Glasses raced around the circle. Friends who had weathered the storm with me, colleagues who had seen my resilience, family who had never doubted my strength. "To new beginnings," I added, my gaze catching on the acceptance letter to the Healthcare Administration Master's Program that sat on my counter. My next step forward. As stars appeared in the darkening sky, I realized the anniversary that had begun with betrayal had transformed into something unexpected. Not an ending, but a threshold. Not a loss, but a reclamation. The greatest gift, after all, had been the chance to rediscover myself. "You have to co-sign the loan for my dream wedding," my sister-in-law insisted. "Family sticks together." I hesitated but agreed, thinking it was the right thing. Months later, they vanished on their honeymoon, boasting about their freedom from the debt. What they didn't know. I'd added a clause they never saw coming. I still remember the weight of the silverware in my hand when my life changed. Tom and I had been saving for 3 years, meticulously tracking every expense in color-coded spreadsheets, all for a down payment on our modest dream home. Not a mansion, just something with enough bedrooms for the kids we planned to have and a small yard where I could finally plant the garden my apartment balcony couldn't accommodate. Friday night dinners at Karen's house were a tradition neither of us particularly enjoyed but dutifully attended. Her split-level suburban home always smelled of potpourri and judgment, especially when directed at me, the woman who stole her eldest son. That evening she'd prepared her signature lasagna, the one where the noodles were always slightly undercooked but we all pretended was delicious. "Rachel, would you mind helping me with dessert?" Karen called from the kitchen. I caught Tom's sympathetic glance as I rose. These helping with dessert moments were Karen's thinly veiled attempts to isolate me for personal interrogations about our finances, my career, or when I planned to finally give her grandchildren. But when I entered the kitchen, I found not just Karen but also Tina, Tom's younger sister, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Perfect timing," Karen said, her voice honey-sweet in that way that always preceded something decidedly not sweet. "Tina has the most wonderful news." I smiled cautiously. "Oh." Before Tina could answer, Karen called out, "Tom. Brad. Come in here, everyone." The small kitchen felt even smaller as Tom and Brad, Tina's boyfriend of 8 months, squeezed in. I noticed how Brad's designer watch caught the light, a stark contrast to the plain timepiece Tom had worn for years. "We're engaged." Tina thrust her hand forward, revealing a diamond that seemed impossibly large for Brad's part-time bartending job. "And we found the most perfect venue on Sanibel Island. It's a dream, Rachel, absolute heaven." "Congratulations," I said, genuine despite the knot forming in my stomach. "That's wonderful news." "The only problem," Karen interjected, "is that these destination weddings require full payment up front. And with Brad's business investment not paying off quite yet." I felt Tom's hand slip into mine under the counter, squeezing gently. A warning or a plea. "We just need a little help," Tina continued, her tears conveniently stopped. Her eyes flicked to my wrist where my watch, a recent promotion gift from the financial services firm where I worked as operations manager, sat. "Just a small loan. Or maybe a cosigner. Your credit score is so perfect, Rachel." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked around at their expectant faces. Karen, whose resemblance to Tina was striking in this moment, both wearing identical expressions of calculated need. Brad, whose smirk betrayed his certainty in my acquiescence. And Tom, whose eyes were fixed on the floor tiles. "How much?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just 40,000, Tina said, as if discussing $40. "The venue alone is 25, but then there's the catering, flowers, my dress." I nearly choked. 40,000 was exactly, to the dollar, what Tom and I had saved for our down payment. "That's a significant amount," I managed. Karen's eyes narrowed. "When Harold and I got married, my sister emptied her entire savings to help us. Family sacrifices for family, Rachel. That's what we do." "And when Tom and I got married at the community center with potluck food and my dress from a consignment shop, did anyone offer to help?" The words escaped before I could stop them. The kitchen temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "That was your choice," Karen said stiffly. "You always said you wanted something simple." "Because we couldn't afford anything else," I wanted to scream. "Because we were saving. Planning. Being responsible." "Rachel," Tom finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we could help a little. Our house fund isn't going anywhere." I looked at him, betrayal burning hot in my chest. His eyes pleaded with me, to keep the peace, to be the bigger person, to not make waves. The same eyes that had lit up when we'd found that perfect craftsman-style listing last month, now asking me to let that dream slip away. "Family sticks together," Tina insisted, reaching for my free hand. "You'd do it for Tom, wouldn't you? And he'd do it for me. That's how it works." In that moment I saw our future unfolding in two distinct paths. One where I said no, became the villain in their family narrative forever. The other where I said yes and watched our carefully constructed plans crumble while Tina and Brad danced on a beach. My throat felt impossibly dry. "I'll need to look at the paperwork first. The terms." Of course, Brad interjected, suddenly animated. "It's just a formality though. With your credit we'll get the best rate." I met Karen's gaze directly. "You know this is our house fund." She didn't even blink. "Sometimes duties to family outweigh personal desires, dear. When you have children of your own, you'll understand the sacrifices we make." "Say yes, Rach," Tom whispered. "We can save again." Something shifted inside me then, a tectonic plate of resentment sliding into place. But with it came clarity. "Yes," I said finally, the word dropping from my lips like a stone. "I'll co-sign." The kitchen erupted in squeals and thank yous. Tina threw her arms around me, her expensive perfume clouding my senses. Karen nodded approvingly. Brad slapped Tom on the back like they'd just closed a business deal. But I wasn't finished. "On one condition," I added, my voice cutting through their celebration. "We do this my way. My paperwork. My terms." Tina waved dismissively. "Whatever you want. Legal stuff is so boring anyway." "My way," I repeated, looking each of them in the eye. "Or not at all." They agreed, of course. They were getting what they wanted. What did my small condition matter? None of them noticed the steel that had entered my voice, or the calculating look that had replaced my hesitation. None of them knew that in that moment, I'd already begun planning the clause they would never see coming. The morning after that fateful dinner, I texted Jessica before I even had my first cup of coffee. We'd been roommates all through college, surviving all-nighters and heartbreaks together before our paths diverged. Me into finance, her into law. Now she worked as a paralegal at one of the city's most respected firms, specializing in contract law. If anyone could help me navigate this mess, it would be Jess. Corner cafe in 20? I texted. Her response was immediate. Make it 30. Bring caffeine. Sounds serious. The cafe was our old haunt, a place where we'd spent countless hours during college dissecting bad dates and planning our futures. When I arrived, Jessica was already there, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that signaled her transformation from the carefree girl I once knew into the sharp professional she'd become. You look like hell, she said by way of greeting, accepting the extra-large latte I slid across the table. Thanks. I feel worse. I sank into the chair opposite her, the weight of last night's decision pressing down on my shoulders. For the next 15 minutes, I poured out everything. Tina's tears, Brad's smug expression, Karen's manipulation, and Tom's betrayal. With each detail, Jessica's expression darkened. So let me get this straight, she said when I finally paused for breath. They want you to co-sign a loan for $40,000, your entire savings for a beach wedding? And Tom is okay with this. I stared into my rapidly cooling coffee. He doesn't want to rock the boat. Family peace is everything to him. And what happens when they default? Because they will. Jessica's bluntness was why I'd called her. She never sugarcoated anything. Then our credit is ruined, our savings are gone, and our future plans are dust. My voice cracked. But I've been thinking all night. What if there's a way to protect ourselves? Jessica raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I told them I'd help, but only on my terms. With my paperwork. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. What if we draft something legal but creative? A document that gives me some leverage if they try to bail on the loan. A slow smile spread across Jessica's face. You want a safety net? More like a trapdoor, I admitted. Something they'd never think to look for until it's too late. For the next 2 hours, huddled over our laptops in the back corner of the cafe, we drafted what would become my insurance policy. Jessica pulled up templates, legal precedents, and statute guidelines. We crafted a document that looked innocuous enough, standard co-signing terms on the surface, but contained a carefully worded clause buried in the middle of page 4. This is genius, Jessica murmured, reading through our creation. It's basically a collateral agreement disguised as a power of attorney clause. If they default on the loan, you have legal rights to any inheritance, property, or significant assets they might receive until the debt is repaid. Is it legal? I asked, scanning the document for flaws. Completely. It's essentially what banks do all the time, just rarely between family members. She looked up from the screen, her expression serious. Rachel, this is legal but ruthless. Are you sure this is the road you want to take with family? I thought about our empty savings account, the house listing we'd have to pass on, the years of careful planning evaporating for Tina's dream day. They made their choice, I said quietly. Now I'm making mine. The next week, I prepared what I called the wedding paperwork package for Tina and Brad. I printed everything: venue contracts, catering agreements, flower orders, and nestled between them our special document. Each page required initials. The final page needed full signatures. I bought a leather portfolio to hold it all, making it look official and intimidating. When Tina arrived at our apartment to sign everything, she was already distracted, constantly checking her phone for messages from the wedding planner. I can't believe how much paperwork goes into one day, she complained, flipping through the stack I'd prepared. Why can't people just trust each other? The irony wasn't lost on me. It's just protection for everyone involved, I said calmly. Standard procedure. As she flipped through the pages, barely glancing at the content, I casually adjusted my purse on the coffee table, angling it so the tiny camera I'd purchased yesterday had a clear view of the documents in Tina's hands. This is all so boring, she said, scribbling her initials where I'd placed small sticky tabs. Brad says I should just let you handle the details since you're so good with money stuff. That's thoughtful of him, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Where is he, by the way? Golf with some potential investors. She rolled her eyes. He says networking is going to be key for his next venture. I nodded, wondering if these investors were as fictional as Brad's last business plan. Well, you're almost done. Just a few more signatures. When she reached page 4 of our special document, I held my breath. Her eyes skimmed the first paragraph, then immediately jumped to the signature line. Whatever, just tell me where to sign, she sighed, tapping her manicured nail impatiently. I trust you. We're family, right? Right, I agreed, pointing to the signature line. Family sticks together. She scrawled her signature without hesitation, then Brad's as his authorized representative, another detail I'd carefully planned for. The camera in my purse captured everything. Her casual dismissal of the paperwork, her voluntary signatures, her verbal acknowledgement of trust. As I gathered the signed documents, a strange calm settled over me. I wasn't angry anymore, just resolved. This wasn't about revenge, it was about protection. Insurance against the storm I knew was coming. All done, I announced, sliding everything into a folder. I'll get these filed right away. You're the best, Tina said, already standing to leave. I don't know what we'd do without you. As I watched her walk to her car, designer purse swinging from her arm, not a care in the world, I whispered a response she couldn't hear. One day you're going to find out. That evening I made copies of everything, stored the originals in our safe deposit box, backed up the video to 3 separate secure cloud locations, and emailed Jessica confirmation that everything had gone exactly as planned. Her response was simple: let's hope you never need to use it. But even then, watching Tom sleep peacefully beside me, unaware of the measures I'd taken to protect us, I knew better. It wasn't a matter of if, but when. The wedding invitation arrived 6 weeks after Tina signed my documents. A thick cream envelope with gold foil lettering that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget. Inside was a weekend itinerary that read like a luxury vacation brochure. Welcome cocktails at sunset, beachfront ceremony, 5-course reception dinner, and a farewell brunch. The RSVP card requested that guests choose between filet mignon and locally caught grouper for the main course. This is excessive, I muttered, passing the invitation to Tom as we sat at our kitchen table. He skimmed it and shrugged. It's her big day. Let her have it. It's our big savings account. Let us have that, I countered, but the argument was futile. The loan had been approved, the money dispersed, and our names were on the documents. The trap was set even if Tom didn't know it. Florida in May was stunningly beautiful, I had to admit. The beachfront resort sprawled across pristine white sand, palm trees swaying in the gentle breeze. The ceremony site alone featured an elaborate flower arch that must have cost thousands. Crystal chandeliers somehow hung from bamboo poles along the aisle. Everything sparkled: the ocean, the decorations, and Tina's gown with its cathedral-length train that required 3 bridesmaids to manage. Our entire wedding cost less than just her dress, I whispered to Tom as we took our seats. I know, he whispered back, his hand finding mine. But this is making everyone happy. I bit my tongue, watching Karen dab tears with a monogrammed handkerchief in the front row. Everyone except us. The ceremony was brief but elaborate. Professional violinists, handwritten vows, and doves released at the final kiss. I kept a pleasant smile fixed on my face through it all, even as I mentally calculated each expense against the loan balance that Tom and I would be responsible for if things went south. At the reception, held in a glass-walled pavilion overlooking the ocean, Brad tapped his crystal champagne flute for attention. He looked tanned and confident in his white linen suit, every inch the successful entrepreneur he pretended to be. I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate our union, he began, his arm around Tina's waist. Especially those who believed in our vision enough to help make this day possible. His eyes met mine across the room, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Tina and I aren't just starting a marriage today. We're starting our empire together. Some people play it safe in life, another pointed glance in my direction, but we believe in taking risks, in living large, in building something extraordinary. I felt Tom stiffen beside me. It was the first time he'd shown any sign of discomfort with the situation. To us, Brad concluded, raising his glass higher. And to those who helped us get here. Your support won't be forgotten. The guests applauded, unaware of the threat lurking beneath his words. I clinked glasses with Tom and took a small sip, watching Tina throw back her entire glass before reaching for another from a passing server. Do you think they have a plan to pay this back? Tom whispered. I think they have a plan never to pay it back, I replied. The wedding weekend passed in a blur of forced smiles and polite conversation. By Sunday morning's farewell brunch, I was exhausted from maintaining the facade. Tina and Brad announced they were leaving directly for their honeymoon. Just a quick 2-week getaway in Greece, Tina gushed, waving her hand dismissively as if a European vacation was a trivial matter. When do you start making payments? I asked quietly when I caught her alone by the mimosa station. Her smile faltered for just a moment. Don't worry about that, Rachel. Brad has it all handled. His new investment is about to pay off big time. What investment is that again? I pressed. You know, his thing. He waved vaguely. With the crypto and the tech startup. It's very cutting edge. I nodded, unsurprised. Just remember, our names are on that loan too. God, you're such a buzzkill, she hissed, her perfect bride mask slipping. Can't you just be happy for me for once? The first missed payment notice arrived exactly 14 days after they left for Greece. I texted Tina immediately, attaching a photo of the letter. Did you see this? Payment was due yesterday. She didn't respond until hours later, dealing with bad Wi-Fi. Brad says don't worry. Just a scheduling mix-up. I might have believed her if not for the Instagram post she'd shared that same morning. A perfectly staged photo of her and Brad on a whitewashed balcony in Santorini, champagne glasses in hand, blue-domed churches in the background. The caption read, Day 14 of our adventure and we're just getting started. #extended honeymoon #living the dream. 2 days later they were in Athens. A week after that Rome. Then Florence, Barcelona, Ibiza and finally Marrakesh. Each destination featured increasingly lavish accommodations and experiences. Private yacht tours, helicopter rides, exclusive restaurants. Their quick Greek getaway had transformed into a grand European tour. Meanwhile, second and third payment notices piled up on our counter. Tom continued to make excuses for them, even as our own credit score began to drop. They're just being young, he insisted. They'll figure it out when they get back. If they come back, I muttered, scrolling through yet another of Tina's posts. This one featuring them riding camels at sunset in Morocco. Tom looked over my shoulder, his brow furrowing. That's a bit much, isn't it? I mean, they know we're covering their payments right now, don't they? I didn't answer, too transfixed by the caption beneath Tina's latest post. A photo of 2 elaborate cocktails against a Moroccan sunset, garnished with exotic fruits and flowers. Some people pay bills. Some people live. #sorry not sorry, #debt-free. Something inside me, something that had been cracking for months, finally broke. I wordlessly handed my phone to Tom, watching his expression change as he read his sister's words. She can't mean, he started. She absolutely means it, I cut him off. They have no intention of paying this back. They never did. I stood up, suddenly energized by a cold, clear anger. They think they've gotten away with it. That we're stuck holding their bag while they live it up across the world. What do we do? Tom asked, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, he looked ready to follow my lead. I walked to our filing cabinet and pulled out a folder labeled Wedding Documentation. Remember when I said I'd help but we'd do it my way? I opened the folder, revealing the contract and a USB drive containing the video of Tina signing it. It's time you saw exactly what my way entails. Tom stared at the contract in disbelief, his eyes widening as he read through the clause I'd hidden in plain sight. You did this without telling me? His voice was a mixture of surprise and something else I couldn't quite identify. A collateral agreement disguised as standard co-signing paperwork. I had to protect us, I replied, not apologizing. I knew from the beginning they'd try to stick us with the bill. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he always made when overwhelmed. And the video? You recorded her signing this. I nodded, pointing to the USB drive. Jessica said we needed evidence she signed voluntarily. That she wasn't coerced or tricked. But she was tricked, Tom said quietly. You didn't explain what she was signing. I didn't hide it either. She chose not to read it. I met his gaze steadily. Just like they chose to bail on their responsibilities and leave us holding the bag. Tom paced our small living room, processing everything. The fourth missed payment notice lay open on our coffee table, the red urgent stamp like a wound across the paper. What exactly does this clause allow you to do? he finally asked. If they default on the loan, I have legal right to any inheritance, property, or significant assets they acquire until the debt is repaid. It's essentially a lien against their future. I explained it exactly as Jessica had to me. It's the same protection a bank would take, just rarely used between family members. So what now? We just keep making their payments. The frustration in his voice was palpable. No. Now I talked to the loan officer. I picked up my phone, my decision already made. We need to establish a paper trail showing we tried to resolve this before exercising the clause. The loan officer, Mrs. Chin, was surprisingly understanding when I called the following morning. Her calm professionalism was a relief after weeks of Tina's dramatic evasions and Tom's wavering loyalties. Unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think with co-signed loans, she explained after I detailed our situation. You have several options, but since the primary borrowers are currently unreachable. They're reachable, I corrected. They're just choosing not to respond. Their Instagram shows they're currently in Morocco at a 5-star resort. There was a moment of silence on the line. I see, she said finally. That does change things. Let me document that in our system. By the end of the call, I had a formal process in motion. Official notifications would be sent to Tina and Brad's last known address and all contact information on file. The bank would also begin reporting the missed payments to credit agencies, something they'd hesitated to do while we were working in good faith to resolve the issue. What did they say? Tom asked when I hung up. Basically that we've been too nice. Covering their payments only enabled them to continue avoiding responsibility. I showed him the notes I'd taken. And every payment we make is an admission that we accept the debt. Tom's face paled. So our credit score is already dropping, and will continue to do so unless we take action. The reality of the situation was finally sinking in for him. I watched as his expression shifted from confusion to anger, the last of his excuses for his sister melting away. That night, as if summoned by our decision to stop enabling them, Brad called. It was 3 a.m., but the harsh ring jolted us both awake. Rachel. His voice was loud, slurred. Music and laughter echoed in the background. My favorite sister-in-law. The responsible one. I put the phone on speaker so Tom could hear. Brad. It's the middle of the night here. Is it? Sorry about that. Time zones, you know. He laughed, but there was an edge to it. Listen, got your messages. And the bank's messages. And Tina's mom's messages. Everyone's so worked up over a few missed payments. 5 missed payments, I corrected. And counting. Details. He dismissed my concern with audible disdain. Look, we're building connections here. Networking. This trip is an investment in our future. Tom leaned closer to the phone. Brad, you need to start making payments. Our credit is suffering. Tom. My man. Brad's tone shifted to false camaraderie. Listen, buddy, I've got this under control. Just need a few more months to get our venture off the ground. You understand? No, I don't, Tom replied, his voice firmer than I'd ever heard him speak to Brad or Tina. We're not covering for you anymore. There was a pause, then Brad's voice dropped its friendly pretense. What exactly are you going to do? Sue family? Come on, Rachel, I know you're behind this. You're so uptight. We'll pay it someday maybe. When we're ready. I felt a cold calm settle over me. Actually, Brad, we don't need to sue you. What's that supposed to mean? His voice had lost some of its confidence. Check your email. I've forwarded you a copy of the agreement Tina signed. Pay particular attention to page 4. I kept my voice level, professional. You have 30 days to bring the loan current, or we exercise our rights under that clause. There was silence, then the sound of fumbling. I imagined him trying to focus his intoxicated vision on his phone screen. This is bull, he started, but I cut him off. It's perfectly legal. And fully enforceable. I glanced at Tom, who nodded his support. 30 days, Brad. Not a day more. I ended the call before he could respond. The silence that followed felt momentous, as if we'd crossed a threshold there was no returning from. He'll call Tina, Tom said quietly. She'll call her mother. Probably, I agreed. Are you ready for that? He took my hand, his grip firm and sure. I should have been ready months ago. I'm sorry I wasn't. The fallout came swiftly. Karen called at breakfast, her voice tight with controlled fury as she demanded to know what stunt we were pulling. Tina texted a series of increasingly hysterical messages, culminating in a tearful video call where she oscillated between threats and pleas. "You can't do this to family," she wailed, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. Behind her, I glimpsed the luxurious interior of what appeared to be a Moroccan riad. "We're blood. Family doesn't bankrupt family," Tom replied simply. The shift in our dynamic was profound. Each day that passed, each new confrontation we weathered together, strengthened something between us that had been fractured by the initial betrayal. Tom stood beside me, united against the emotional manipulation that had controlled him for so long. And when the 30 days passed without a single payment, without even a concrete plan or genuine promise, I knew it was time. The clause would remain dormant for now, a sleeping dragon waiting for the opportune moment. "What if they never get any assets worth claiming?" Tom asked one night as we lay in bed, the weight of the situation still heavy between us. I turned to him, seeing in his eyes the growth of these difficult months. "Then we've lost the money but gained something more valuable." "What's that?" "The knowledge that we can weather anything together." I squeezed his hand. "And the freedom from being manipulated by your family." He nodded slowly, but I could see a question still lingering in his eyes. "You planned all this from the beginning, didn't you? You knew exactly how it would play out." "Not exactly," I admitted. "But I knew enough to protect us. To have a contingency plan." "Remind me never to get on your bad side," he said, but there was admiration in his voice now, reluctant but real. Little did we know how soon our contingency plan would be tested. 3 months passed with no word from Tina and Brad beyond occasional social media posts showing their gradually shrinking world tour. Morocco giving way to Spain, then France, then finally back to Greece where it had all begun. Tom and I had settled into a new normal, paying the minimum on the wedding loan while working extra hours to rebuild our savings. The strain had taken its toll, but we'd found a strange new strength in weathering the crisis together. Then came the call that changed everything. The harsh ring of Tom's phone cut through the darkness at 3:17 a.m. I was instantly awake, that primal sense that middle-of-the-night calls only bring bad news. "Hello." Tom's voice was thick with sleep. Then suddenly alert. "What? Which hospital?" I sat up, reaching for the bedside lamp. Tom's face had gone ashen in the sudden light. "We'll be there as soon as we can," he said, ending the call and turning to me with eyes wide with shock. "Mom. Heart attack. They don't know if she's going to make it." We dressed in silence, moved through the dark apartment gathering essentials, and were in the car within 10 minutes. The hospital was an hour away, near Karen's suburban home. As Tom drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, I made calls, to his younger brother Mike in Chicago, to Karen's sister in Florida. No one answered at this hour. "Has anyone reached Tina?" I asked quietly. Tom shook his head. "Left a voicemail. She hasn't responded to anything in weeks." The hospital was a maze of sterile hallways and harsh fluorescent lighting. We found Karen's room in the cardiac intensive care unit, where machines beeped steady rhythms and tubes seemed to connect to every part of her still form. A doctor met us outside, her expression grave. "The next few hours are critical," she explained. "The heart attack was severe. We've stabilized her for now, but there was significant damage." Tom nodded mechanically, his eyes never leaving his mother's face through the glass window. Despite our complicated relationship, my heart ached for him. For all Karen's flaws, she was still his mother. "Can I sit with her?" he asked. The doctor nodded. "One visitor at a time. Talk to her. Hearing is often the last sense to go." I squeezed his hand. "I'll be right out here." Hours passed in the artificial timelessness of hospital waiting rooms. I dozed uncomfortably in a vinyl chair, waking regularly to check on Tom, still motionless at his mother's bedside. Mike arrived around noon, red-eyed from the early flight. Karen's sister Janet came by evening. Tina didn't answer any of our calls. Shortly after midnight, alarms blared from Karen's room. Medical staff rushed in as we were ushered to the waiting area. 20 minutes later, the doctor emerged, pulling off her mask with a defeated expression. "I'm very sorry," she said softly. "We did everything we could." The next few days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, phone calls, and grief. Tom moved through it all with quiet dignity, taking charge where his siblings couldn't or wouldn't. Mike had to return to Chicago for work but promised to be back for the funeral. And Tina finally responded 3 days after her mother's death with a text message, "Booking flights now. So sorry. Bad reception where we were." The funeral was held on a Thursday, unseasonably cold for early fall. The small church filled with Karen's friends, neighbors and extended family. Tom and I stood in the receiving line, accepting condolences from people I barely knew but who seemed to know all about me from Karen's stories. Most of them unflattering, judging by their surprised expressions upon meeting me. "You're nothing like how she described you," one elderly woman whispered, patting my arm. "Much warmer." I managed a sad smile, wondering what exactly Karen had said about me over the years. Tina and Brad arrived 15 minutes after the service began, slipping into the back row. Even in mourning, Tina managed to look glamorous in designer black, her tan a stark contrast to everyone else's seasonal pallor. They avoided my gaze across Karen's flower-laden casket, keeping to themselves during the reception that followed. The real confrontation came 3 days later at the reading of the will. Karen's attorney, Mr. Harmon, invited the family to his wood-paneled office downtown. Tom and I arrived first, followed by Mike and finally Tina and Brad, who entered with the practiced nonchalance of people pretending not to be worried about money. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Harmon began, adjusting his reading glasses. Mrs. Karen Miller's last will and testament is relatively straightforward. After covering outstanding debts and funeral expenses, her estate consists primarily of her home, valued at approximately $320,000, and investment accounts totaling $95,000. He cleared his throat, turning the page. These assets are to be divided equally between her 3 children, Thomas Miller, Michael Miller, and Christina Miller Reynolds. Tina visibly relaxed, shooting a triumphant glance in my direction. I kept my expression neutral, even as I felt the weight of the document in my purse, the one I'd been waiting months to use. "Each will receive approximately $138,000, pending final appraisal and sale of the house," Mr. Harmon continued. "When can we expect distribution?" Brad asked immediately, earning a sharp look from Tom. "Usually within 90 days, the attorney replied. However, he looked at his notes. "I understand there may be some complications regarding Mrs. Miller Reynolds' portion?" This was my cue. I reached into my purse and withdrew the contract, sliding it across the polished desk. "Mr. Harmon, I need to present this document for your review," I said calmly. "It's a legally binding agreement signed by Christina Miller before her marriage, regarding a substantial loan for which my husband and I are co-signers." The attorney raised an eyebrow, examining the paperwork. "This appears to be a collateral agreement? What is she talking about?" Tina snapped, looking to Brad for support. "According to this signed agreement," I continued, "Mrs. Miller, meaning myself, now controls Miss Miller's inheritance until the loan is satisfied. The current outstanding balance is $43,875, including late fees and interest." The attorney's confusion turned to understanding as he read through the document. "This appears to be in order. It's unusual between family members but legally valid." "You're kidding." Tina stood up, her composed facade cracking. "You can't be serious. That's my inheritance." "And this is your debt," I replied evenly. "A debt you promised to pay but instead chose to ignore while traveling the world on our dime." "Tom," she pleaded, turning to her brother. "You can't let her do this. It's Mom's money. She would have wanted me to have it." Tom looked between his sister and me, conflict evident in his eyes. But he simply said, "You signed the agreement, Tina. You've had months to make good on it and chose not to." The meeting deteriorated quickly after that. Brad threatened legal action, Tina dissolved into tears, and Mike, who had remained silent throughout, finally asked to see the contract himself. "Damn," he whispered after reading it. "That's cold. Effective but cold." We left the attorney's office with the matter unresolved on paper but crystal clear in reality. Tina's share would be used to pay off the loan, with the remainder given to her afterward. It was exactly the outcome I'd planned for, but the victory felt hollow in the wake of Karen's death. That night, as we lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Tom finally broke his silence. "Rachel, maybe we should let it go for the sake of peace," he whispered. "Mom would have wanted the family to stay together." I turned to face him, studying the grief etched in the lines around his eyes. I didn't ruin the peace, Tom. I just refused to be the fool. They made their choices long before today. He sighed deeply but didn't argue further. We both knew the truth. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about consequences, accountability, and the painful lesson that family loyalty only works when everyone plays by the same rules. The morning after our conversation, I woke to find an email from Brad's newly hired attorney. The subject line read, "Cease and desist, fraudulent contract," and the body contained a thinly veiled threat to sue me for predatory behavior and intentional deception. According to Brad's lawyer, I had manipulated an emotionally vulnerable woman into signing documents she couldn't possibly understand, and abused a family relationship for financial gain. "They're trying to intimidate us," I told Tom, forwarding the email to Jessica immediately. Classic Brad, thinking he can bully his way out of consequences. Within hours, Jessica had responded with a masterful legal smackdown, reminding Brad's attorney of the video evidence we had preserved showing Tina's voluntary signing, her verbal confirmation of trust, and her refusal to read the documents despite being given ample opportunity. She concluded with a pointed reminder about frivolous lawsuits and counterclaims for legal expenses. "You came prepared for war before a single shot was fired," Tom said quietly, reading Jessica's response over my shoulder. "I came prepared for Brad," I corrected. "There's a difference." 3 days later, Brad escalated by filing an emergency injunction to freeze Karen's estate until the matter could be settled in court. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, which gave us precious little time to prepare. "Will the video be enough?" Tom asked as we sat with Jessica in her firm's conference room, reviewing our evidence. "It should be," she replied, though her expression wasn't entirely confident. "But judges can be unpredictable when family matters are involved. They sometimes prioritize what they see as fairness over strict contractual terms. There's nothing fair about borrowing $40,000 and intentionally never paying it back," I pointed out. Jessica's smile was grim. "Then let's make sure the judge understands exactly what happened." The courthouse meeting was set for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I wore my most conservative navy suit, the one I reserved for important client meetings, and Tom matched in a charcoal gray ensemble that made him look older, more substantial. Tina and Brad arrived late, her in a demure black dress that seemed calculated to project grieving daughter rather than globe-trotting spendthrift, him in an ill-fitting suit that was either borrowed or hastily purchased. "All rise," the bailiff announced as Judge Martinez entered the courtroom. She was a small woman with a no-nonsense demeanor and sharp eyes that missed nothing. After the initial formalities, Brad's attorney presented their case. I had tricked Tina into signing complex legal documents during an emotionally vulnerable time, exploiting family trust to insert predatory terms that no reasonable person would agree to. "Your Honor, this was nothing short of fraud," he concluded dramatically. "Mrs. Miller took advantage of her sister-in-law's trust and lack of legal expertise." Judge Martinez turned to Jessica. "Counselor, your response?" "Your Honor, we have documentary and video evidence that directly contradicts the plaintiff's claims," Jessica replied calmly. "May we present Exhibit A?" The judge nodded, and the courtroom screen flickered to life with my hidden camera footage. The quality was surprisingly good. Tina's dismissive wave clearly visible as she flipped through the documents, barely glancing at them. "Whatever, just tell me where to sign," her recorded voice echoed through the courtroom. "I trust you. We're family, right?" My filmed response was equally clear. "Right? Family sticks together." The next clip showed Tina signing page after page without reading, laughing about how boring paperwork was, and even taking a phone call in the middle of the process. In the background, Brad could be heard joking about all these stupid formalities when he briefly entered the frame. When the video ended, the courtroom was silent. Tina stared at her lap, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment or anger, perhaps both. Brad whispered furiously to his attorney, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Were the documents altered after signing?" Judge Martinez asked Brad's lawyer. "No, Your Honor, but..." "Was Ms. Miller prevented from reading the documents?" "No, but she trusted her sister-in-law too." "Was there any evidence of coercion or misrepresentation?" "The very nature of hiding such terms in complex legal language is..." Judge Martinez held up her hand, silencing him. "I've heard enough. She turned to look directly at Tina and Brad. The court finds no evidence of fraud or deception. The document was signed willingly with ample opportunity to review its contents. The agreement is valid and enforceable. She tapped her gavel decisively. Case dismissed with costs assigned to the plaintiff. Brad exploded out of his seat. This is bull. Sir. The judge cut him off with a glare. Control yourself or be held in contempt. As we exited the courthouse, Tina rushed up to Tom, tears streaming down her face. How could you let her do this to me? I'm your sister. Tom looked at her for a long moment. How could you leave us with your debt while you partied around the world? That's the real question, Tina. With the legal battle settled, I moved forward methodically. Karen's house went on the market the following week. A local developer had been trying to acquire properties in her neighborhood for years to build modern townhouses, and he jumped at the opportunity to purchase Tina's share. The irony wasn't lost on me. Karen had always complained about those eyesore modern monstrosities encroaching on her quiet street. Once the sale was complete, I paid off the wedding loan in full. The remaining balance from Tina's share, around $95,000, went into an account for Tom's portion of the renovation we'd planned for the remaining 2/3 of the house that now belonged to him and Mike. We decided to keep Karen's house rather than sell it completely. Mike was happy to remain a silent partner, collecting rent on his portion while Tom and I transformed the dated split level into a modern open-concept home that finally had space for the family we hoped to start. 6 weeks into the renovation, as the contractors were finishing the exterior paint, a car pulled into the driveway. Tina stepped out alone for once. She looked thinner, less glamorous than I remembered. I watched her from our freshly painted porch as she hesitated by her car before slowly walking up the path. Rachel, she began, her voice thick with emotion. The house. It looks beautiful. Thank you, I replied neutrally. I heard you paid off the loan. She twisted her purse strap nervously. Brad and we're not together anymore. He left when the money ran out. I said nothing, waiting. I don't have anywhere to go, she continued, tears welling in her eyes. Mom's house was supposed to be my safety net, and now? She gestured helplessly. I know I don't deserve it, but I was hoping. Is there any way I could get even a small portion back? Just enough to start over. I studied her face, searching for the manipulation I'd grown so accustomed to seeing. Instead, I found only desperation and something that might have been genuine regret. For a moment, I considered it. Then I remembered the Instagram caption that had broken something inside me months ago. Some people pay bills. Some people live. #sorry not sorry, #debt-free. Wait here, I said, turning to go inside. I returned with a simple black frame containing a cross-stitched quote I'd hung in our new entryway the day before. A reminder of everything we'd been through. This is all I can give you, I said, handing it to her. Tina looked down at the neatly stitched words. Family sticks together until it falls apart. Her fingers trembled against the glass. I deserve that, she whispered. Yes, I agreed. You do. As she turned to leave, Tom appeared in the doorway behind me. He looked between us, understanding dawning on his face. Tina, he called, his voice softer than I expected. We have a spare room until the renovation is finished. You can stay for 2 weeks. After that, you're on your own. She stopped, disbelief and hope warring on her face. Really? 2 weeks, he repeated firmly. And you'll help with the work. No free rides. As Tina nodded eagerly, gathering her purse from the car, I gave Tom a questioning look. Family is still family, he said quietly. But this time we're setting the terms. I nodded slowly. Perhaps there was a lesson in that for all of us. Not about blind loyalty, but about boundaries, consequences, and the true meaning of sticking together. Some debts, after all, could never be repaid with money alone. If this story of sweet revenge had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when Rachel revealed her hidden clause at the attorney's office and the look on Tina's face when she realized her inheritance was going to pay for her abandoned wedding debt. Absolutely priceless. What was your favorite moment from Rachel's journey? Drop it in the comments below. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story about family betrayal, clever contracts, and sweet, sweet justice. On our 10th anniversary dinner, my husband's father suddenly stood up and accused me of stealing his $20,000 Rolex. Check her purse, he demanded. My husband, without hesitation, snatched my bag and dumped it out in front of all our guests. When nothing was found, he sneered, she probably hid it already. That's when I noticed his mistress smirking by the dessert table. Check her purse. The accusation thundered across the private dining room, freezing every guest mid-conversation. My father-in-law's face had turned an alarming shade of crimson as he jabbed his finger toward me. He stole my Rolex. $20,000 sitting right there on my wrist not 30 minutes ago. I stood paralyzed, champagne flute trembling in my hand, as 50 pairs of eyes swiveled in my direction. The room that moments before had hummed with anniversary congratulations now pulsed with uncomfortable silence. Before I could even form a defense, Isaac was beside me, his expression unreadable. Dad, are you sure? He asked, but there wasn't a trace of doubt in his voice. Then, without warning, Isaac snatched my designer clutch from the table beside me. Our eyes met for just a second, long enough for me to see there was no hesitation, no faith, no decade of trust between us. With a swift motion that seemed practiced, he appended the contents across the pristine white tablecloth. Lipstick, house keys, phone, wallet, tissues. My private life scattered like confetti before our closest friends and family. Nothing resembling a watch appeared among my belongings. She probably hid it already, Isaac sneered, his voice carrying to every corner of the stunned room. That's when I noticed her, standing by the dessert table, champagne in hand, lips curved in a satisfied smirk that confirmed everything I had suspected for months. 2 weeks earlier, I had been a wife planning the perfect anniversary celebration. The Rosewood restaurant had required booking 6 months in advance, but I'd wanted everything to be flawless for our milestone. I'd selected a 5-course menu featuring Isaac's favorites. The truffle risotto he'd fallen in love with on our honeymoon in Italy, the seared scallops that reminded him of our first Valentine's Day. Each detail had been considered, from the jazz quartet playing our wedding song to the custom photo timeline of our decade together displayed in the entryway. I'd spent 3 hours at the salon getting my hair done in loose waves, the style Isaac had always complimented. My midnight blue dress, bought specially for this occasion, had cost more than I'd ever spent on clothing, but I'd justified it as an investment in our marriage, in the moment, in us. The guest list had been carefully curated. 30 of our closest friends, Isaac's colleagues from the architectural firm, my fellow teachers from Westridge Elementary and immediate family. People who had witnessed our love story unfold, who had supported us through the early financial struggles, the miscarriage 3 years ago, the rebuilding of our relationship afterward. Isaac's father Richard had always been a dominating presence in our marriage. A self-made real estate developer with the subtle warmth of concrete in January, he had never quite approved of me. Teachers don't understand business, he'd once told Isaac within my earshot at a family barbecue. They live in fantasy worlds where everyone gets a gold star. His approval meant everything to Isaac, who had joined his father's business despite his passion for residential architecture. Richard arrived 40 minutes late to our anniversary dinner, making an entrance in his custom-tailored suit, Italian leather shoes clicking authoritatively against the hardwood floor. He'd embraced Isaac firmly, clapping him on the back before turning to me with a perfunctory air kiss that deliberately missed my cheek. I noticed his flashy Rolex immediately. He always made sure everyone did, twisting his wrist just so when he reached for his whiskey. 10 years, he'd said, raising his glass. Longer than I gave it, I'll admit. Several guests had laughed nervously, mistaking the jab for a toast. The first warning sign that something was terribly wrong came when Isaac disappeared for 20 minutes during the appetizer course. Just taking a call from the Portland client, he'd whispered, but his cologne lingered after he slipped away. The Portland project had been completed 2 months ago. The second red flag appeared when I noticed a woman I didn't recognize chatting with Richard. She wasn't on my meticulously prepared guest list, yet she moved through the space with the confidence of belonging. Tall, with sleek auburn hair and a dress that suggested careful selection rather than special occasion panic buying, she caught Isaac's eye across the room in a way that made my stomach clench. Who invited Amanda? I'd asked my sister-in-law Bethany, trying to keep my voice casual. Oh, she's the new marketing director at the firm, Bethany replied, her eyes darting away too quickly. Richard probably brought her as his +1. By the time we reached the main course, Isaac had barely spoken 3 sentences to me. He circulated through our guests, charming and attentive to everyone but his wife. When it came time for speeches, his words felt rehearsed, hollow. A public performance of affection rather than its genuine expression. Then came dessert. Richard had excused himself to the restroom. Upon his return, his accusatory bellow had shattered any pretense of celebration. Now, with my personal items splayed across the table and no watch in sight, I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt the weight of every judgmental stare, every whispered doubt. "I never took your watch, Richard," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the crushing pressure in my chest. "Who else would have?" he demanded. "You've always been jealous of what this family has. A schoolteacher's salary can't buy Rolexes." Isaac didn't defend me. The man who had promised to stand by me through better or worse stood silent while his father questioned my character, my integrity, my worth. Worse, he joined in, ransacking my purse without a second thought, humiliating me before everyone we knew. In that crystalline moment of betrayal, I understood that our marriage had been an elaborate performance, one where I alone had been unaware of the script. The anniversary celebration, like our vows, had been meaningless. The truth stood mockingly before me in the form of Amanda, whose smirk told me she knew exactly where Richard's watch had gone. "Check the security footage," I said quietly. "Check the security footage," I said quietly. The words hung in the air but no one moved. As I stood amid the wreckage of my personal belongings, time seemed to stretch and contract. My mind wasn't on the humiliation of the present but drifting through the echoes of the past, to when I first met Isaac Morgan, long before he became the man who could dump my purse without a second thought. 12 years ago, I was teaching 3rd grade at Westridge Elementary when a pipe burst in the ceiling, flooding 3 classrooms including mine. The school district hired Morgan Construction to handle the repairs. Isaac arrived with blueprints tucked under his arm and a smile that reached his eyes. He spent extra time designing built-in bookshelves for my classroom's reading corner. "Something the kids will remember," he'd said. He asked me out over a discussion about children's literature. I'd mentioned how my students loved Charlotte's Web and he confessed he'd never read it. The following week he showed up with a dog-eared copy post-its marking his favorite parts. "I never understood why school made reading feel like work when it could feel like this," he'd said. I fell in love with his curiosity, his eagerness to see the world through new eyes. Our early years glowed with the warmth of genuine connection. Isaac would leave sticky notes in my lunch bag with quotes from books he was reading. We spent Sundays at farmers' markets, planning meals we'd cook together. He listened, really listened, when I talked about my students' breakthroughs or struggles. The construction business was his father's dream, but Isaac's passion emerged when he sketched residential designs on napkins during our dinner dates. "Someday," he'd whisper, "I'll build us a home with a classroom just for you. Windows facing east for morning light, shelves for all your books, and a garden where you can teach outdoors in spring." Our wedding was intimate. 60 guests in his cousin's backyard. Richard's only comment was that we could have had a proper venue, if we'd accepted his offer to pay. Isaac had insisted on covering costs ourselves. "This is our life, not his investment," he'd said with a conviction I admired. The shift came so gradually I barely noticed it happening. 3 years in, Isaac joined his father's executive team. The sticky notes became less frequent, replaced by late nights at the office. Our Sunday traditions faded as client meetings increasingly filled weekends. His sketches of dream homes gathered dust. "It's temporary," he'd assure me. "Dad's grooming me to take over one day. Then we can do things differently." By year 5, Isaac's closet held suits instead of jeans. His vocabulary filled with terms like leverage and capital investment. He stopped asking about my students. When I shared classroom stories, his responses became perfunctory. "That's great, babe," his attention never leaving his phone. The miscarriage during our 7th year created a chasm between us. After 3 days at home, Isaac returned to work while I remained hollow, adrift in grief. "Life has to go on," he'd said, as if losing our child was simply an unfortunate scheduling conflict. That night, I heard him on the phone laughing at something I couldn't hear. I realized then that the man I married was disappearing, molecule by molecule, replaced by someone with his face but not his heart. Looking back, the first tangible clue of his infidelity arrived last September. Isaac had always been methodical about his laundry. Dark suits in the dry cleaning pile, workout clothes in the hamper. But one Tuesday evening I found his dress shirt crumpled in the bathroom trash, the collar smeared with lipstick 2 shades bolder than anything I owned. Must have brushed against someone at the conference, he explained without meeting my eyes. Then came the password changes on his phone and laptop, the hushed calls that ended abruptly when I entered a room, the unexplained weekend site visits, from which he returned smelling of unfamiliar perfume. A credit card statement delivered to our home instead of his office revealed dinner charges at restaurants we'd never visited together. Always for two, always on Tuesday evenings. I could have confronted him. The old Layla would have demanded answers, would have fought for our marriage with the same determination I showed when advocating for a struggling student. But this new Layla, shaped by years of subtle dismissals and gradual erasure, chose a different path. Know everything before you show anything, my grandmother used to say. So I watched and waited, noting every inconsistency, every lie, every moment his actions contradicted his words. I became a researcher in my own life, documenting the evidence of its unraveling. In February, Isaac announced renovations for his home office, a space to focus without distractions. He hired contractors I'd never met and insisted I respect his privacy by staying out of the room during and after construction. The work took 3 weeks, during which strangers trampled through our home while Isaac was conveniently absent. After the renovation, Isaac's study remained perpetually locked. He claimed it contained sensitive client information, but the keypad installation seemed excessive for residential construction blueprints. One afternoon while he attended a city planning meeting, I noticed a small delivery box in our recycling bin, empty packaging for a high-end security system. Curiosity led me to our online shopping accounts. Nothing there. But when I logged into his business expense account, using the password that hadn't changed since our marriage, his childhood dog's name, I found the purchase. A comprehensive surveillance system with multiple cameras, installed during the renovation. The invoice description read, security installation for home office protection, 4 corner point cameras with cloud storage and remote access. 4 cameras in one room seemed excessive. The question wasn't whether Isaac was hiding something but what, and from whom. Was he monitoring the house when he was away? Or was this another layer of secrecy in our increasingly compartmentalized lives? I found my answer 3 weeks later. While Isaac showered, I used his tablet to check movie times. A notification flashed across the screen, motion detected in study. Without thinking, I tapped it. The app requested a PIN which I correctly guessed on my second try, the date Richard had made him partner. The screen displayed 4 different angles of Isaac's study in crystal clear definition. In that moment, I realized the cameras weren't to keep people out. They were to preserve what happened inside. And that's when I began planning how I might access the footage, never imagining it would one day become my salvation at our anniversary dinner. Accessing the security footage required careful planning. Isaac's predictable schedule became my greatest advantage. Tuesday client dinners, Thursday golf with his father, Saturday morning gym sessions followed by site visits that mysteriously lasted until evening. I created a calendar tracking his movements, identifying patterns that would give me uninterrupted time with his security system. Thursday mornings proved ideal. Isaac left by 7 for breakfast with Richard before their standing tea time at Willow Creek Country Club. They wouldn't return until after 2, giving me hours alone with the study door and its electronic keypad. The lock itself presented the first challenge. After 3 failed attempts, the system would trigger a notification to Isaac's phone. I couldn't risk guessing wrong. I spent weeks observing which keys showed fingerprint smudges, noting how he positioned his hand when entering. One morning, I deliberately spilled coffee near his briefcase and while helping him clean up, watched from the corner of my eye as he entered the code. 3-6-1-9-7. Our wedding date followed by his lucky number. The irony wasn't lost on me. With the code secured, I waited for the perfect Thursday. It came in March when Isaac mentioned his golf game with Richard would be followed by drinks with potential investors. I'd have at least 8 hours. Once his car disappeared down our tree-lined street, I gave myself 30 additional minutes in case he forgot something. Then, heart pounding against my ribs, I approached his study. The keypad blinked green on my first attempt. The door swung open to reveal a room I barely recognized. Gone were the warm wooden bookshelves that once held novels we'd discussed over Sunday coffee. Instead, glass and chrome dominated the space, a statement of modern masculinity that felt nothing like the man I'd married. I located the security system's control panel hidden behind a false drawer in his desk. The interface asked for the same PIN used on his tablet. My hands trembled slightly as I entered it, half expecting alarms to sound. Instead, the screen illuminated with file folders organized by date. Working backward, I opened the most recent Tuesday folder and randomly selected a timestamp from the evening. The video loaded, showing Isaac's empty study. I fast-forwarded until movement caught my eye. Isaac entered, followed by a woman, the same auburn-haired woman who would later stand by our anniversary dessert table. They were laughing about something I couldn't hear. The system recorded video but not audio. She perched casually on his desk as if she'd done it 100 times before. He stood between her knees, hands resting on her thighs with easy familiarity. I watched, stomach churning, as they kissed with the comfort of established lovers, not the urgent passion of a new affair. Then came the moment that shattered whatever remaining illusions I held about our marriage. Isaac walked to the wall safe hidden behind an abstract painting. A safe I didn't know existed in a home I thought we shared. From it he removed a small red box. Inside gleamed a diamond bracelet that caught the light as he fastened it around her wrist. The intimacy of the gesture, the way his fingers lingered on her skin, the practiced ease of the clasp, told me everything. This wasn't a first gift. This wasn't a beginning. I closed the video, unable to watch more. With mechanical precision I began checking other Tuesday evenings, confirming a pattern that stretched back months. Some nights they didn't appear, suggesting they'd found alternative meeting places. Other nights they worked late at his desk, heads bent together over blueprints. Colleagues to any observer except one who recognized the unnecessary touches, the lingering glances. The technical challenge of preserving this evidence without leaving digital footprints required research. I couldn't simply email the files to myself. The system would log it. Instead, I purchased a high-capacity external drive, using cash at an electronics store 30 miles from our neighborhood. I downloaded weeks of footage, focusing on key moments that proved the relationship's duration and nature. The hardest part wasn't finding the evidence, it was living with it. Each morning I'd kiss Isaac goodbye, knowing I'd watched him kiss her the same way. I'd ask about his day, knowing which parts he'd fabricate. The performance drained me, but I refused to break character until I held all the pieces. "You're quiet lately," Isaac commented one evening as we prepared dinner. "Everything okay at school?" "Just focused on end-of-year assessments," I replied, chopping vegetables with precise movements, wondering if he noticed how my hands shook. "You know how it gets." He nodded without looking up from his phone. "Don't stress too much. It's just elementary school. Just elementary school." Another dismissal of my passion, my profession. Once it would have stung. Now it was merely another brick in the wall I was building between us. A wall he didn't yet realize existed. The weeks approaching our anniversary required particular vigilance. I maintained a calm facade while assembling the evidence I needed. The final piece came unexpectedly, 1 week before our celebration. Isaac's father visited on a Tuesday afternoon. Unusual, as their meetings typically occurred at Richard's office or the country club. I arrived home early from a professional development day, letting myself in quietly through the side door. Voices from Isaac's study carried down the hallway. I recognized Richard's authoritative tone, followed by Isaac's placating one. Curious, I remained still, listening. 10 years is long enough, Richard was saying. This charade has served its purpose. Morgan Construction has the school district contracts thanks to your marriage to a teacher. We don't need her connections anymore. I know, Dad. It's all arranged. Amanda's already looking at condos for us. And the anniversary dinner? The perfect public ending. Amanda will be there. You'll bring the Rolex. And accidentally discover it's missing during dessert, Richard finished. You'll check her purse, find nothing, but the seed will be planted. Everyone will question her integrity. By next week she'll be out of our lives and the narrative will be clear. She was never good enough for the Morgan name. I retreated silently, my entire body numb. Their plan stripped away any lingering doubt about what I needed to do. The anniversary dinner wouldn't be their stage, it would be mine. The final challenge involved the restaurant's projection system. 3 days before our celebration, I visited the Rosewood under the pretense of confirming floral arrangements. While the manager reviewed centerpiece options, I casually mentioned a video montage of our decade together. We have everything set up for multimedia presentations, he assured me. HDMI connection, projection screen, full sound system. Just bring your device and our staff can help connect it. I nodded, mentally adding one more item to my preparation list. I would arrive early, check the equipment and ensure everything functioned perfectly. For once, Isaac's tendency to arrive fashionably late would work in my favor. The night before our anniversary, I packed 2 purses. The blue clutch Isaac expected and a larger tote containing my evidence. I saved the most damning video to multiple devices and rehearsed my timing. Whatever happened, I would not leave that dinner without the truth being known. The anniversary dinner progressed exactly as I'd predicted. I arrived 45 minutes early, my larger tote bag containing both the external drive and a USB flash drive with a single carefully selected video file. The restaurant manager helped me test the projection system, and I left the flash drive discreetly connected, ready for its moment. "Everything's perfect, Mrs. Morgan," he assured me. "Just press this button on the remote when you're ready to start your presentation." I slipped the remote into my midnight blue clutch, the one Isaac would later empty across the table, and waited in composed silence as guests arrived. Each congratulatory hug felt like an embrace with a ghost, each happy anniversary, like a eulogy for something already dead. Now, standing amid the wreckage of my personal belongings scattered across the white tablecloth, I felt strangely calm. The last 10 years had been building to this moment, not the humiliation they'd planned, but the revelation I'd prepared. "She probably hid it already," Isaac sneered, his voice carrying across the stunned room. My lipstick had rolled toward Richard, stopping against his whiskey glass. My house keys lay tangled with tissues. My wallet gaped open, revealing family photos Isaac hadn't looked at in years. The remote control sat partially hidden beneath my phone. I lifted my eyes to meet Amanda's gaze across the room. She stood by the dessert table, champagne flute poised at her lips, satisfaction playing across her features. She wore an emerald dress that highlighted her auburn hair, and around her wrist, visible even from a distance, sparkled a diamond bracelet I recognized from the security footage. But there was something else I noticed as well. On her empty ring finger was a thin indentation where a band would normally sit. She'd removed it for the occasion, but not quite long enough for the mark to fade. This wasn't just an affair. This was a parallel life. "I never took your watch, Richard," I repeated, my voice steady despite the ache spreading through my chest. "You've always been jealous of what this family has," he countered. "Always wanting more than a schoolteacher deserves." My sister-in-law Bethany shot me a sympathetic glance before lowering her eyes. My closest friend Elena half rose from her seat, clearly intending to defend me, but I caught her eye and gave an imperceptible shake of my head. This was my moment and I would handle it my way. "A Rolex is quite distinctive," I said, reaching slowly for my phone and the remote beneath it. "Perhaps we should check if anyone saw where it went." "Stop stalling," Isaac snapped. "Everyone here knows what happened." I looked around the room at everyone. Friends who'd attended our wedding, colleagues who'd supported our careers, family who'd witnessed our vows. Did they believe I was capable of theft? Their uncomfortable expressions suggested they weren't certain what to think. "I agree completely," I said, straightening my shoulders. "Everyone should know exactly what happened." With deliberate movements, I picked up the remote and walked toward the front of the room where the projection screen hung. Isaac's eyes narrowed as he watched me, confusion replacing his earlier certainty. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Providing evidence," I replied, pressing the button. The lights automatically dimmed as the projector hummed to life. The screen filled with the familiar interior of Isaac's study. The glass desk, the chrome shelving, the abstract painting hiding his secret safe. The timestamp in the corner read 1:42 p.m., March 28th. Last Tuesday, just 3 days ago. A collective murmur rippled through the guests as Isaac appeared on screen, loosening his tie as he entered the room. He checked his watch, Richard's Rolex gleaming on his wrist, before making a phone call. "She's in the meeting," he said to someone off-screen. "You can come over." The room fell deathly silent as Amanda entered the frame minutes later. They embraced with the familiarity of longtime lovers. Isaac led her to the couch, where they sat discussing something with animated gestures. Then Isaac stood, removing Richard's Rolex from his wrist. "Dad never wears this anymore anyway," he said, the words clearly visible on his lips despite the lack of audio. "He'll blame Layla if he notices it's gone. Win-win." Amanda laughed, accepting the watch from him and slipping it into her purse. The same small clutch she now held by the dessert table. The footage continued, showing Isaac opening the hidden safe and removing a small jewelry box. Inside was a ring, not a bracelet this time, which he placed on Amanda's finger. She admired it briefly before removing it and tucking it away. Just until next week, he mouthed clearly. After the anniversary. I pressed pause, freezing the image of them embracing on the screen. The timestamp showed the footage had been recorded at 2:17 p.m. on Tuesday, the exact time Richard claimed to have last seen his watch. The silence in the room was absolute. 50 pairs of eyes swiveled from the screen to Amanda, whose smirk had vanished, then to Isaac, whose face had drained of all color, and finally to Richard, who looked thunderstruck. "Check her purse," I suggested quietly, echoing Richard's earlier demand. The green Prada clutch by the dessert table. For several heartbeats no one moved. Then Elena stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, and walked purposefully toward Amanda. My friend's expression was thunderous as she reached for the purse. "Don't you dare," Amanda hissed, clutching it to her chest. "Either you open it or I will," Elena stated flatly. "Everyone here deserves to know the truth." Amanda's eyes darted to Isaac, silently pleading for intervention, but he remained frozen in place, speechless for perhaps the first time in his life. Richard had sunk back into his chair, his complexion ashen. After a moment of tense standoff, Amanda reluctantly opened her clutch. Elena reached in and withdrew the gleaming Rolex, holding it up for all to see. The watch caught the light, its diamond-encrusted face glittering accusingly. "I believe this belongs to you, Mr. Morgan," Elena said, walking the watch to Richard and placing it on the table before him. My fingers trembled slightly as I pressed another button on the remote, advancing to the next clip. Isaac and Amanda again, but this time discussing their plans for after the anniversary dinner. Their silent movie conversation played out for all to witness, their lips forming words that were now unmistakable: divorce, settlement, reputation, school board connections. A hand touched my shoulder gently. Bethany stood beside me, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I suspected, but I never knew, not all of this." From the corner of my eye, I saw Richard rise unsteadily from his seat. His face had transformed from shock to rage, his attention fixed not on me but on his son. "You took my watch?" he growled, advancing toward Isaac. "You were going to let me believe." "Dad, I can explain," Isaac began, backing away slightly. "You used my Rolex in your scheme? My watch." It struck me then how telling his reaction was. Not outrage at his son's betrayal of his marriage vows, but anger over the unauthorized borrowing of his luxury timepiece. As the Morgan family drama unfolded, I noticed our guests beginning to gather their belongings. Some approached me with awkward expressions of sympathy. Others slipped away without making eye contact. The perfect anniversary celebration I'd planned was dissolving around me, but I felt only relief as the weight of deception lifted from my shoulders. I switched off the projector and turned to face what remained of our anniversary dinner. The scattered contents of my purse, the half-eaten meals, the melting desserts, and the crumbling facade of my marriage. I gathered my scattered belongings from the tablecloth methodically, one by one, preserving what little dignity remained in the situation. Lipstick, keys, wallet, phone. Each item returned to my clutch represented a piece of myself I was reclaiming. The anniversary dinner had transformed from celebration to crime scene, with truth as the victim resurrected. "Layla." Isaac's voice cracked as he approached me, his father still berating him in the background. "This isn't what it looks like." I met his eyes, searching for any remnant of the man who had once built bookshelves for my students. All I found was desperation, not for forgiveness but for damage control. "It's exactly what it looks like," I replied quietly. "It's what it's been for a long time." Elena appeared at my side, car keys already in hand. "I'm taking you home," she said, not a question but a statement. "My home, not yours." Across the room, Amanda was attempting to slip away unnoticed. Richard's thundering voice stopped her at the door. "The watch and the ring," he demanded, hand outstretched. "Family heirlooms don't walk out with mistresses." The diamond bracelet, however, remained on her wrist, apparently not valuable enough to reclaim. My third-grade colleague Marissa approached, eyes brimming with indignation. The school board meeting is Tuesday, she whispered. Consider your job safe. I hadn't even thought about how Isaac and Richard might use their connections to retaliate against my career, but Marissa already had my back. As Elena guided me toward the exit, Isaac made one final attempt, grabbing my arm. You can't just leave. We need to talk about this. Actually, I can. I removed his hand as I would direct a misbehaving student, firmly but without drama. The talking was supposed to happen years ago. Tonight was just the punctuation. The cool April air hit my face as we stepped outside, carrying the scent of cherry blossoms from the restaurant's courtyard. I inhaled deeply, feeling oxygen reach parts of me that had been suffocating for years. You planned all of that? Elena asked as she drove through the quiet streets of our suburb. The projection, the timing, everything? I had 3 different versions ready depending on how the evening unfolded, I admitted. I never expected Richard to make it so easy with the watch accusation. That was serendipitous. Elena's guest room became my sanctuary for the next 2 weeks. While Isaac blew up my phone with alternating threats and pleas, I met with a divorce attorney who specialized in cases involving financial deception. Barbara Winters had steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. The security footage is gold, she said during our first consultation. Not just for proving infidelity, which frankly courts see every day, but for documenting conspiracy to damage your reputation and career. That's malice, and judges notice malice. Isaac's desperate attempts to salvage his image escalated. First came flowers delivered to Elena's house. Arrangements I'd mentioned liking years ago, proving he'd once listened. Then came a handwritten letter listing memories from our early years, as if nostalgia could erase betrayal. When these failed, he enlisted mutual friends to plead his case. He says it was just one mistake. Our neighbor Jim reported awkwardly when I ran into him at the grocery store. The mistake wasn't the affair, I replied, selecting a carton of eggs. It was thinking I wouldn't notice, wouldn't care, or wouldn't respond. 3 weeks after the anniversary dinner, I returned to our house while Isaac was at work to collect my personal belongings. Bethany insisted on accompanying me. He changed the locks, she warned me beforehand. But I have a key. The home I entered felt like a museum of someone else's life. Family photos still hung on walls, but they captured moments I now questioned. Had he been sincere in any of them? Had that vacation smile been genuine, or had he been texting Amanda when I looked away? In the bedroom I packed clothes, jewelry, and books. In my classroom office I gathered teaching materials and student mementos. I left wedding albums, gifts from Isaac's family, and anything purchased with joint funds. The divorce proceedings would sort out property, but some disconnections needed to happen immediately. As I packed my grandmother's quilt, I found myself oddly calm. The anger would come later in unexpected waves, while driving, while grading papers, while shopping for groceries. But in that moment I felt only clarity. You're handling this with such grace, Bethany said, helping me carry boxes to Elena's car. I'd be a wreck. This isn't grace, I corrected her. It's self-preservation. Word of the anniversary revelation spread throughout our community. Parents of my students stopped me in hallways to offer support. My daughter adores you, one mother said. We're on your side. The principal assured me my position was secure, regardless of whatever pressure the Morgan family might apply to the school board. Richard attempted damage control by donating generously to the school's building fund, a transparent effort to maintain influence. The check was accepted, but the naming opportunity he'd clearly expected didn't materialize. 6 months after our anniversary, the divorce was finalized. I received a fair settlement, partly due to Barbara's skillful negotiation and partly due to Isaac's desire to avoid further public embarrassment. The security footage proved more valuable than any prenuptial agreement. I used part of the settlement to place a down payment on a small craftsman bungalow 3 neighborhoods away, close enough to keep my teaching position, far enough to avoid casual encounters with the past. The house needed work, which became my evening therapy. I painted walls, refinished floors, and planted a garden that would bloom in seasons to come. Elena helped me host a housewarming party that doubled as a reclamation of friendship. Some mutual friends had chosen sides after the divorce, mostly Isaac's, drawn by social connections to his family's wealth. Their absence created space for deeper bonds with those who remained. To new beginnings, Marissa toasted, raising her glass in my sunny backyard. I added, and to the endings that make them possible. 1 year after the anniversary dinner, I received an unexpected visitor. Bethany stood on my porch, shifting uncomfortably. Isaac and Amanda broke up, she said. He wanted me to tell you he's changed. He's in therapy. I invited her in for coffee, appreciating her loyalty to her brother despite everything. I'm glad he's getting help, I said sincerely. But my life isn't on pause waiting for his character development. That life had expanded in ways I hadn't anticipated. I'd started teaching creative writing workshops for adults at the community center. I'd adopted a rescue dog named Bronte who accompanied me on hiking trails I'd always wanted to explore but never had time for during my marriage. I'd reconnected with a college friend whose theater company needed help designing sets. A creative outlet that brought unexpected joy. The woman who had spent a decade accommodating her husband's ambitions now made decisions based solely on her own interests. The teacher who had focused on others' growth now nurtured her own. The wife who had ignored warning signs now trusted her instincts implicitly. You know what the strangest part is? I confided to Elena on the anniversary of my divorce. I'm actually grateful. Grateful? She echoed incredulously. For what he did. Not for what he did, I clarified. For what it made me do. Pay attention, gather evidence, stand up for myself. I could have spent another decade in that slow-motion disappearing act. Instead, I found myself. The security footage that had exposed the truth now existed only in legal records. I'd deleted all personal copies, not out of forgiveness but because holding on to evidence of betrayal meant keeping it alive in my daily thoughts. The past had served its purpose as teacher. It didn't need to remain as companion. That night, I sat on my porch swing watching fireflies illuminate the garden I had planted with my own hands. The light they cast was intermittent but persistent. Brief moments of brilliance in the darkness, continuing their display whether anyone witnessed it or not. I found myself smiling at their quiet metaphor for resilience.